Okay, so even though we are in geometry, we have a little bit of algebra that we need to review for our midterm exam. So the key here is we have three problems that ask for the distance between these 2 points. Well, distance formula is going to be equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And that's going to be true for all these. So for this first one here, we have the distance of the square root of the difference of the x's. So that's 4 minus 1 squared plus 6 minus 5 squared. So this is 3 squared plus 1 squared, which is equal to the square root of 10. So I can't reduce that, so I leave it as just that, the square root of 10. For the next one here, I have that the distance is going to be equal to, this is 15 minus 10 squared plus 4 minus 10 squared. So this is the square root of 5 squared plus negative 6 squared. Make sure you put that negative inside parentheses. So I get 25 plus 36. So distance is equal to the square root. That's going to be the square root of 61. 61, I'm fairly certain, is a prime number, so that means we can't reduce it. So we leave it just like that. And then we have over here, distance is equal to the square root of negative 7 minus 11 squared plus negative 2 minus 3 squared. And so this is going to be equal to square root negative 7 minus 11. It's going to be a negative 18 squared plus negative 5 squared. Negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. Negative 18 squared is 324. We're going to add on to that 25. And so that's going to be 349. So square root of 349. Let's see, 349. I believe that's divisible by some numbers. Well, I'm not going to take the time right now to go through all that. If 349 were reducible, you could reduce it, but we're just going to leave it like that for now. So that's it for distance formula. So make sure to know the distance formula. You can plug it in. A number of times when I've seen you guys work through this, a lot of the mistakes I see are just from sloppiness. Not writing out the steps, not putting parentheses around negatives. Just write everything out. If you write this out, you can't go wrong. And notice I don't lose the square root sign. So unless you actually take the square root, like this is the square root of 36, which is 6, you keep the square root sign. All right, so here's the whole sheet as a whole. So next up, we're finding the midpoint. We want to find the midpoint formula. I'll just write it out here. Midpoint formula is just going to be x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. That's the midpoint formula. So for this first one, it's going to be 7 plus 9 over 2, comma, negative 5 plus negative 1 over 2. And so we're going to have 16 divided by 2, which is 8. And then negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. So that's the answer for the first one. And then we're going to have negative 8 plus 3 over 2. And then 4 plus negative 4 divided by 2. So this is going to be a negative 5 halves and 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And then here, this is an odd number, so we just leave it like that. And that's perfectly fine. Leave an improper fraction as an improper fraction. And then over here, we're going to have, this is a negative 1.8, oops, not comma, negative 1.8 plus 1.1 over 2, comma 1.9 plus 2.8 over 2. And so negative 1.8. Now the nice thing about this is that because we have decimals, we don't really like to leave decimals with fractions, so we're going to make the whole thing a fraction. So here, this is going to be a negative 0.7 over 2, and this is going to be a 1.9 plus 2.8, which is a 4.7 over 2. So a negative 0.7 divided by 2 is going to be negative 0.35, and then a 4.7 divided by 2 is going to be a 2.35. Like I said, if we have decimals within a fraction, we just make the whole thing a decimal as opposed to leaving decimals with fractions. But if we do have an improper fraction, we leave it as such. So yet again, midpoint formula, make sure you realize that you're finding a point. So if you get one value, one number for a midpoint formula, please realize you should get a point. You should get an x comma y. All right, next we want to find the products of these. So this is just straight multiplication. So here this is going to be v times v plus 5 plus 1 times v plus 5. We're multiplying each term in here by this whole set of parentheses. So we get v squared plus 5v plus v plus 5. Combine the like terms, we get v squared plus 6v plus 5. And that is our final answer. Now for the next one, we're going to have 6k times negative 6k minus 2 plus 4 times negative 6k minus 2. And so distributing this out, we get negative 36k squared minus 12k minus 24k minus 8. Combine the like terms, negative 36k squared minus 36k minus 8. So that's going to be the answer there. And then for here, we're going to do the same setup. So negative 13 over 5b times 5/3 b minus 2 plus 3 times 5/3 b minus 2. So here I get negative 13 over 3b squared plus 2 times 13 over 5, which is going to be plus 26 over 5b, plus here this will be, the 3's will cancel out, so I get plus 5b minus 6. Now I need a common denominator to add these like terms. So this is going to be negative 13 over 3b squared plus 26 fifths b. Common denominator would be 5, so 5 times 5 is 25, right? Because 25 divided by 5 is 5. So it means 5 over 1 is 25 over 5. And now I can combine my like terms. So I get negative 13 over 3b squared plus 51 over 5b minus 6. And that's my final answer there. So a little bit of fractions, don't be intimidated by it. Make sure you can multiply out binomials. Next, we're just factoring. So we want to factor these. First thing we can always look for is a greatest common factor. So a number all three terms have in common. Here it's a 2. So this actually is equal to 2 times k squared plus 3k minus 70. And so I want to find two factors of 70 that differ by 3. Well, this is nice because we have k squared. So the only two factors of k squared are k and k. 70, well, if we think 1 times 70 is 70, 2 times 35 is 70, 5 times 14 is 70, 7 times 10 is 70. And those are a distance of 3 apart. Because this middle term is larger, that means that the two of these, the larger value, will be positive, because this middle term is positive. And then because the last term is negative, it means that they're going to be opposites. So I get this as my factored form. We did learn a whole bunch of strategies, all those different methods. So check out those videos, and you can practice solving it this way as well. Number 5 should be hopefully straightforward, because the first term is a product of b and b, it's b squared. And then two factors of 6 that are 5 apart from each other are 6 and 1. So we're going to have plus 6 and minus 1. And that's what we got there. So that's our answer. The next one, we can pull out a greatest common factor again. So that's going to be actually 3n this time. And now I get n squared minus 10n plus 16. So I need two factors of 16 that combine to get a negative 10. Well, because this last term is positive, it means these two signs will be the same. And because this is negative, it means they'll both be negative. Well, 16 is 8 times 2. So I get that as my answer. So my answer is 3 times n minus 8 times n minus 2. And then yet again for over here, a nice simple no factoring of the greatest common factor. We just get v and v. Two factors of 48 that are 2 apart from each other. That's going to be 8 and 6. And because this middle term is positive, the larger of these values will be positive. Because this last term is negative, it means they're going to be opposites. And like I said before, you can do all those other strategies to factor these. Now sometimes we have these set equal to 0. So the only way to solve these is to actually factor. So we need to factor these first and then set each factor equal to 0. So here this is going to be k minus 3 times k minus 8. So we get k minus 3 is equal to 0. K minus 8 is equal to 0. So we get k is equal to 3 or 8. For this one here, we're going to have to factor this again. So this is going to be x minus 6 times x minus 5. So we set these equal to 0. X minus 6 is equal to 0. X minus 5 is equal to 0. So we get that x is equal to 5 and 6. And here, we're going to factor this. So this is going to be x minus 5 times x minus 1. So we get x minus 5 is equal to 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0. So we get x is equal to 1 and 5. Notice I'm not putting these in parentheses. If I put these in parentheses, this would be a point. That would be x comma y. But by not putting parentheses, it's just a list. So be aware of that. That's why I will take off points if I ask for a point and you do not give me parentheses around. All right, so here we're going to have a plus 3, a plus 8. So we get a plus 3 is equal to 0, a plus 8 is equal to 0. So we get a is equal to negative 3 and negative 8. And those are the answers. So I think that's pretty much it. Yep, that's it for your review. So make sure with your algebra review, you know distance formula, midpoint formula, how to multiply binomials, and how to factor trinomials into binomials. These will help you, as I will ask these questions on your midterm exam.